Hi there, my name for those who don't know me is Nicki. I write as Nicki J. Markus and Asta Idonea, and I'm here because this morning I discovered through a friend there is a thing called AuthorTube, which is for authors making YouTube videos, and there's a sort of intro post that you can do, so I figured I would jump on the bandwagon and join you all. So I have the list of questions with me. I'm having a bit of camera trouble this morning. I just filmed my end of the month book review video and I had batteries running out and SD cards getting full, so I'm probably going to just do 3 or 4 questions, pause, and then do 3 or 4 more because I don't want to get stuck in the middle again and it'll all be all over the place. So there will be a few chops in the video, but they'll be intentional, unlike the last ones. So how did I find out about AuthorTube? I already mentioned my friend Alina posted her intro video this morning, or last night my time, which I watched and enjoyed, and it seemed like a great community idea, so I figured I would, as I said, join in and get to know you all. What genres do I write in? Well, as I said earlier, I have 2 pen names. As Nicki J. Markus, I write mainstream paranormal fantasy works, often with a bit of historical thrown in. My major work is a fantasy novel called The Ragnarok Chronicles, which is based on Norse mythology. It's an epic novel, like over 200,000 words. And I've written a few shorter works as well, a few novellas, another novel, but a more normal length novel, about 60,000 words. Then as Asta Idonea, I write LGBT fiction, and I write mostly MM. I've done an odd FF and trans piece, but mostly gay romance, and I write across the genres in that. I've done everything from sci-fi to history to contemporary to paranormal. I've done a lot of work for calls, so it depends on what the call wants, and when it's my own story, it just depends what pops into my head. My most recent piece that I finished and signed a contract for was a superhero novel, and that will be my first novel-length MM. They've all been short stories and novellas up till now. So that will be out from June Spinnerfest next year, so I'm pretty excited about that. So yeah, it really just depends. Whatever takes my fancy is what I write about. What is my preferred writing tense, point of view and category? Mostly I write for an adult audience. Certainly most of my MM is, my Asta Idonea work is aimed at adults. It's not necessarily all explicit. Some of it does have a higher heat rating, some of it is just sweet romance. But even so, I'd say mostly that's aimed at adults. With my mainstream, my Nicki J. Markus writing, although I don't write them for a YA audience, they are all YA suitable. There's no explicit content in those. So in terms of tense and point of view, I've done a mix. I sometimes do first, sometimes do limited third, but if I do limited third, I often do it from the point of view of several characters, maybe 2 or 3 of them. I don't have a favourite, it depends on the story. Generally when I have a story idea, you get a sense as a writer of how it needs to be told. Some of them desperately call out for a first person. You need to get right into that character's head and just absolutely be inside them and with them and be telling their story from their own point of view. Whereas other works, that slightly more detached third person works better. So it just depends. I don't have a set choice, I just go with what feels natural for that particular piece. Am I a plotter, a pantser or a plantster? I actually have to say I've never heard of a plantster. Mostly I'd say I'm a pantster. I do a little bit of plotting when I get a story idea. I'll generally have a good sense of a beginning and an end. However, I don't sit there and meticulously plan out how I'm going to get between the two. I do a bit of character work. I like to write, for longer works, particularly novella and novel length, I like to write character profiles. So I like to really know my characters, what they like, what they don't like, their favourite colours, what they wear. So I do that first, but I don't go through and plot each scene. I just like to sit down, start writing and see where it takes me. Am I self-published, published or yet to be published? The answer is self-published and published. I have self-published 3 works, The Ragnarok Chronicles I mentioned earlier, plus 2 novellas. I wanted control of Ragnarok Chronicles, and I tried it at a few places and they balked at the length, and so that one just made sense to go self-published. I haven't had huge success with self-publishing. I know some people find it really great, get a lot of money that way, a lot of sales, a lot of exposure, but I found it doesn't particularly work for me. I don't have a lot of money to put into advertising and things like that. So I generally prefer, although I liked the creative freedom of having my baby all to myself, I generally prefer to go with a publisher. And I have a publisher who I've been going with a bit now for my mainstream works, and I have several with whom I've worked for my LGBT writing. I like the publisher aspect because I can kind of sit back. I mean, obviously I go through edits with the editor, work on cover design with them, but I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about doing all the formatting, and I also get that little bit of a boost and assistance with the promotion as well to start things off, if you've got a publisher name behind you. So obviously you don't get quite as much money, and as Alina said in her video, it is nice sometimes to know what you're selling and how it's going rather than waiting for reports, but at the same time you don't have to think about it too much. You can go off and do your promotion, but you don't have to be worrying about that, monitoring that financial side. You just get the money as it comes in, if there is any. I'll do one more, then I'll take a quick break because I'm just wary of this camera suddenly shutting off on me. What publishing company, literary agent or printing company are you represented by or use? If you're not published, what's your dream? So I mentioned briefly just now, but self-publishing I've done through Ingram Spark, which it has its ups, as with most companies, it has its pros and cons, its ups and downs. There's plenty I like about it. The distribution side of things they do is very good to get you places like Book Depository as well as Amazon. The only thing I don't like is they don't pay you till you reach a certain amount of money, and for me, if I've only sold one book in Canada, then I'm still waiting for that money. I don't get it paid out because I haven't made enough, because it's per type. Like I think they lump some of the ebooks together, but for print, if someone buys a print book in Canada and only one person ever buys a print book in Canada, I don't know when I'm ever going to see that $3 or however much I'm getting for it. So that's the only downside, but they're very professional to work with. The printing looks great and gets you in a lot of distribution channels as well. In terms of publishing companies I worked with, in the past I've worked with Silver and Takiri, although unfortunately they both closed in difficult circumstances. More recently Wayward Inc. Publishing, who I was with, closed as well, although that was a slightly more amicable closure. Okay, I did have a minor camera malfunction then, but I'm back again. So I'll finish this question by saying that my current publishers for mainstream are Fireborn Publishing mostly, and for LGBT I currently or recently have worked with Dream Spinner Press, 9 Star Press, Less Than 3 Press, Man Love Romance, plus a few just sort of one-off publications with different people. In terms of dreams, obviously one day I'd love to be published by someone like Penguin, but I don't know how realistic that is. We'll have to see what the future holds, hey? So what AuthorTube related videos can we expect to find on your channel? So at present, obviously I put up bits about my books that are coming out. Most notably I like to record audio excerpts, as well as sticking up just a normal text excerpt online. So you'll hear me reading my own stories. And I've got a few things in the pipeline where I'm considering, maybe later this year, if not definitely as we head into the new year. I've got a few things happening with my sister's wedding and that later this year, but I'd like to do a few more videos, maybe turn some of my blog posts about writing tips and editing tips and things like that into videos. So do comment below if that's the sort of thing you'd like to see. Let me know and I will definitely make them for you. I'm also thinking of doing a bit of a tour of some of the books I read around my shelves here and things like that. So at the moment it's mostly just audio excerpts of my books, and I do end of the month reviews of what I'm personally reading, but I do have plans for more. I've only very recently started trying to use YouTube a bit more, so it's still early days, but you will see new stuff coming. When did I start writing? Gosh, I've wanted to write since I was a child, long ago, as far back as I can remember. I guess early on I used to pen a few childish things, and then I got into fan fiction. Most of my fan fiction's not up anymore, but I wrote quite a few back then. Van Helsing, Red Dwarf, Alias, all sorts of different topics or different TV shows and films that I based my works on. My first original piece that was actually sort of published and sent out into the world was a short story, sort of vampire, mostly a bit horror, but not full on, more of a thriller I suppose. And that came out in 2011. I've pretty much kept writing since then. Before that I did try and get published a novel I wrote about Robespierre, French Revolution, which no one picked up, and I've still got it here, and I know why, because the prose is awful. It is still in the back of my mind to do something with it though, because I liked my idea for how to present it, so perhaps in the future I will rewrite it. We'll see. So the first story I ever wrote, I've kind of answered that at the same time as the last question, I think, so I'll move on. What authors have inspired my writing? Gosh, I mean, I love so many authors. I think perhaps one of the key influences of people are always, you know, Chelsea Quinn Yarbrough, her historical vampire series, the Saint Germain series. I love her writing because she takes a vampire story, but the fact that he's a vampire isn't the most important thing. She takes him through these different periods in history. Her research is meticulous. So definitely, as in terms of researching historical fiction, she's a top of the list for me. I love reading authors like Haruki Murakami, Milan Kundera. I would never dream of trying to emulate their style, because I mean their prose is just beautiful, but I definitely read them a lot for inspiration. And in more general terms, just some of the authors that are self-publishing or working with small presses that are having great success, you know, I like to support them, and I like to learn from them as well. Do I schedule my writing sessions? Yes and no. I'd love to say I write however many hours every day, especially since I'm freelance editor, so I work from home. It doesn't seem to work out like that lately. I had a bit of a down spell when a couple of my publishers closed towards the end of last year. It kind of left me a bit despondent about my writing. I didn't know, I was like, is it worth it? Should I keep pursuing it? So I've had a bit of a stretch when I've done very little. I finished off a couple of projects, that was it. But my enthusiasm, I've signed a few contracts recently for those works that I was finishing, and that's kind of boosted me a bit, given me my enthusiasm back. So I am getting into it again. I've got one more piece I'm reworking that was orphaned from one of those publisher closures that I'd like to try and get back out there. And I have a strong idea for a new piece, so I want to get back into it. And when I am sort of up to speed at my best, I do try and do some every day, even if it's only an hour or so, just to keep things flowing, keep things moving. I don't set myself word counts because I find that too restrictive, but if I'm doing something every day, or at the very least every other day, then I'm pretty happy. Sometimes I've got promotional type stuff that takes over that I have to get done, but every day at least a little while is certainly the aim, and it's something I do reach when I'm really getting into a story and really at my peak. Do I type on a computer, or write everything by hand, or a blend? A blend. I used to type everything straight on the computer, but I work on the computer for my editing, I'm on the computer for promotion, I'm on the computer all the time, and I was starting to get a lot of wrist strain. So my hand was so tired by the end of the day, all through, you could feel it. So to try and split things up a bit, what I tend to do now is do a first draft by hand and then swap to the computer to type up. When it comes to edits, I'll print off the work, do edits by hand, type up. I actually find that really helpful in other ways too, doing a first draft by hand. Because I am an editor, I really get lost sometimes in getting too caught up in a sentence, like, is this the right phrasing? Can I use a different word? And this is still in a first draft. So it slows me down quite badly. And I find that writing on paper, then typing up helps, because it's almost like I'm doing a first brief edit, because as I'm typing I might change something. And that makes it easier for me to move on, just get that first draft out and then go back and look at it more closely. What am I most looking forward to now I'm part of AuthorTube? Getting to know some other authors on here. As Alina said in her post, which was what inspired me to do my own, we don't see a lot of authors on YouTube, or not that I've come across. It tends to be mainly book bloggers and things like that. So I'd like to get to know some more people, share ideas, share tips, and yeah, just be part of the community on here. So I will close there before this camera does something weird to me again. But I hope to see you all again. You can subscribe to my channel here. I've put some links into my blog. I have a newsletter that I'm literally just starting. The first one will go out next week, so I'd love it if you want to come across and see me there. You can find all my social media on my website, and I'd just love to hear from you. Comment and I'll reply. Look me up on Twitter. It's always lovely to chat. Whether you're a reader or a writer, feel free to drop me a line on any of my profiles, and let's share a love for books. So until our next video, I'll say goodbye.